welcome to our Friday Live. It's a day with Matt. So Matt was our fitter and big hitter, as advertised earlier on. Everyone wants to see someone hitting the ball miles, so we have him right here. So thanks for joining us. We're going to go through a little bit with Matt about the distance side of things, but also how that impacts his bag and game, and how he's learned to develop that speed over the years. But also any questions about the TSR product that we did a bit of a review on yesterday, any other questions surrounding this, please just fire them in as we go. James and I will try and field those and bring them into the conversation as and when we can. So, Matt, you've been with us 3-4 months now.
Yeah, 4 months. It's been a good 4 months. Interesting. A little bit more of an interesting environment over here in terms of how we work. It's a lot more of a team environment, so it's a nice change, definitely.
And you've been working in industry for
8 years now.
Globally.
Yeah, so through university and then 2020 in Australia, but then COVID stopped that very short, and then came back and 3-4 months ago joined up here and
played from a young age.
First picked up a golf club when I was 2.
Oh yeah, just say play for a young age.
Yeah, I had plastic clubs until I was sort of 3 or 4. Then the parents had enough of me tearing up the garden, so took me to a golf course, and from 5 I was having lessons and played county under 12s, 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s. Got injured, so that stopped. Took a break from the game when all the injuries happened, and then took a break because of university, and then came back to it when I came back from Australia.
Yeah, and from it, I mean, seeing as we're going to be going on to the long drive, the long drive stuff, distance rather than necessarily long drive stuff, was from an injury point of view, was that partly to do with because of the amount of speed and the torque you generate in your swing? Was that something? Was it linked to that at all? Or
no, so that was just
build up.
Yeah, just pure. The first one came from just pure hitting balls, and the knee just gave up just from the pure. I think I was probably hitting at that point 600-700 balls a day, 6 days a week. Builds up quite quickly.
Cumulative.
Yeah. And then the other one was just medical, appendicitis. They didn't catch it. They told me the appendix was on the other side of the body, which is, not quite accurate.
Good start.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it got to a point where they had to cut stomach muscle to deal with it. So then that was a year out. So it's been a great,
good progression.
Yeah, great compound of medical injuries. So there we go.
And so, obviously we're here primarily kind of first bit. We're going to talk about the distance side of things. It's something you've got in abundance. It's not something that you've trained particularly for?
No. So when I came back from Australia 2020 was when Bryson first did his whole looking at hitting it longer, and he started doing a lot of content around how he gained his distance and started doing interviews and podcasts about what he does from a practice perspective. So I didn't go down the gym route that he did, but I went down his practice route of feeling like at the end of a session, feel like you max out, drop it down a touch, then go again. And you'll see that if you were to do that, you get to a point of club speed or ball speed, drop it down 2 or 3 mile an hour to a point where you're comfortable at that speed. Then when you feel like you go again as flat out as you can, you'll find you'll actually gain a bit of speed. Just because your body learns to move in that way. And I probably did that for 6 months, 8 months, and saw a rise of 10, 12 mile an hour ball speed in 6 months. So made a big difference.
Not insignificant,
I think following that, just carried on with it. Just carried on with that theory.
And I think that's the thing that whilst there are going to be physical attributes that help someone move a little quicker, certain musculature, fast twitch, naturally having a physiology that fires fast. That's certainly one element that can help you to achieve it. It's something that actually below a certain age you can kind of train into your body a little bit. You can alter your musculature makeup in terms of how many fast twitch fibers you've got. Up until, it's probably roughly puberty. There's no defined age, but roughly puberty. Beyond that, you're kind of set. So, you've got an elder brother. I've got an elder brother. You're kind of constantly chasing them. So, you spend...
Played cricket from a young age. That was a lot of running in very quickly. So, I think that was probably the first part of that.
You spend your first formative years trying to catch up with your elder sibling. So, you're naturally ingraining that I don't like the term muscle memory. I kind of patterns. I prefer the term patterns. But it's something that actually I think for a lot of golfers, you can train speed in. It's not something where just because you don't play that regularly or you're swinging it at say 90 miles an hour doesn't mean you can't push it to 95, 96. We saw a few years back Porrick Harrington swinging away like a madman on the tee before shots. People, what's he trying to do? And ultimately, it's training your muscles to move quickly.
Yeah, I think it's definitely there's a common perception that people have of I can only get to a certain speed. I can only get so far without doing gym work, working on changing. I mean, product has some bit to do with it, but ultimately, if you practice it yourself, you can pick the speed up, no matter what age and where you are. You can pick the speed up. You have to tweak the swing a little bit, but you can pick it up with some ease.
So clearly, we now need to see a hit one. So we're going to start with your kind of normal gamer driver.
Okay.
Which, in terms of setup-wise, and we'll do, I guess, chat. We'll put it to camera. We've got, the King, the F9. This was a driver that, it's a bit like the current LS head. Actually, almost had an extra gear once you got over 105 odd mile an hour club speed. It seemed to perform that bit better. And shaft-wise, this is one of the, I don't know how well it's going to come up on the screen, but it's one of the sort of the proper 125, very, very high grade, stout, the original Rogues that came out, the tour only ones, which for someone like Matt, you don't want that kind of twisting and loading going on the shaft. So it essentially connects you to the club head, and that's about it.
Yeah, you gave me this 3 months ago, probably this shaft. It was before I had the standard one in there, and you could see it on camera. It just got a little behind every so often, and changing to this thing's made a big difference.
So I think if we do a couple where just fairly standard swings, like not kind of going
just trying to find the
fairly
fairway.
standard kind of your kind of the fairway finder swing.
Yeah. It's amazing. I warmed up before this and it's already stiffened up.
Age, getting older.
Only 25, you can't use that.
So I mean, one of the things that I think really stands out with your swing, and this is one of the things that I think, generally speaking, the biggest key to building speed, balance. It's like that, how in sync, how stable physically you are through the swing with that. It's not a wild slash where you're coming out of it and you're losing form. You stay in shape the whole way through, and that to me, if you watch anyone else swinging, that's a 100 mile an hour swing, but you're at 126.
Yeah.
But most importantly, efficient with it. That's a 326 yard carry. Yeah, and that's just the fairway finder. So right, we'll do.
Let me try and hit the cutty fairway finder. This is the kind of the low flight. It's real safety net when wind's blowing or it's a tight fairway. Has he cut it? Well, he has.
Yeah. You say lower flight.
Hit down on it a little more.
Club speed up a little bit. Ball speed, obviously not quite as efficient because of the nature of the launch and spin. But again, it's a very in control swing. So obviously, to achieve those sort of speeds and have the control, I mean, you've got to have the physical stature and strength and speed to be able to get up to those sort of levels. But equally speaking, it's such a balanced shot. It's what one might call a proper golf swing. It's not a wild thrash at it. So. Right, next one up, let's just push it up. So if you're going from that swing and going to kind of build through the gears, essentially, what do you do differently? And you mentioned earlier about it's a slightly different...
Yeah, so I now start to use my lower body a little more. So those first two, I don't have a lot of lateral movement. It's just kind of, it's a spin of the body rather than a lateral slide. Okay. Whereas now I'll look to kind of get a little bit more movement of the weight. You'll see on the way, the initial move will be the right foot will come, the heel will come up, and then it will go back, the left heel will come up, and then it all clears through the left foot, spins to increase the speed of that rotation.
And for those that kind of watch some of the long drive, that's the kind of thing you see Carl Larcher do.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, to me, he was the one that I watched and was like, there's a lot of concepts of standard golf in his swing. He just does it at a speed that's ridiculous. And he started doing some of the content he started doing just some normal vlogs on the golf course, and you watch him when he then just hits normal swings, and there's no real movement to it. And I'm like, well, that doesn't look too dissimilar to what I do with it. It's just moving quicker because he trains for it. And so then I took that and then started working with him, trying to build my own version of it. Let's give it a go, see if we can find it.
So, straight away, you're then up to 132 club speed, 194.5 ball speed. And actually, okay, spun a bit more than the earlier one, so a little bit of efficiency loss. But
yeah, a little bit out the bottom, that one.
Club speed's then jumped another 6 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So.
There's more in the tank. That was the sort of fourth gear. Let's really go flatline now. A little low on the head again. Yeah.
And in terms of, I guess there are, these aren't necessarily swings that someone would end up using on the course, but actually in terms of principles to take for someone trying to, looking to try to build some speed, there's a lot talked about using the ground, using the forces to really kind of almost people talk about jumping out of the shot and using that to kind of jump and catapult the club forward. Is that something that you're aware of doing, or is that more just a result of the change in leverage, change of sort of...
Initially, I had a real thought process of, I'd spend a lot of practice swings towards the end of a session actively feeling like I was really high all my weight was on the left side and the right foot was really high, getting to the top and feeling that pause where the left foot's getting up off the floor and then getting to here and then actively trying to do that motion to create the spin, because I knew that's what...
Bit of a snap speed.
It's what creates that extra gear. So I did spend a little while trying to just going through just like that on the range, just those motions step by step by step, and speeding it up and speeding it up and speeding it up and seeing how fast we could get with it. Let's give it one more.
And 193, ball speed 136. So probably a little low on the face. Is that tee a little bit low?
Touch low. But with 8 degrees aloft, it's one of those. It's that swing gets you hitting up on it a bit more. So, attack angle goes up to 8 from 3 or 4. So
yeah, if we take that first one there, angle of attack was 3.
Yeah, it's one of those that with a tail driver, do you gain much from it, from swinging it like that on the golf course in terms of distance? Probably not that much.
Yeah.
But what I've found I gain is if I then hit a stock swing, I gain 3 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Which then that 326 goes out to 335 in the air. I pick up 10 yards just because my body's now moving.
Yeah. And that's why they use specialist club heads for long drive guys. You've got that much less loft because you're getting up on it more. You're putting more loft on the ball naturally through angle of attack. And then if you've got an 8-degree driver, you're 8 degrees up, you're 16 degrees, unless you're kind of getting hands forward. That's why they use 3, 4, 5 degree drivers.
I mean, Joe was using a 1 degree driver for a while, Joe Miller. Yeah. In his that rain he had in 2015, 2017, he was 1 degree for 3 years because he was 12 up on it. Yeah. He was so up on it, he had to play low, otherwise he had no chance. So it's So
we have also put together a bit of a kind of a fun club. This is one where we've got a this is the current Cobra head, but we've got a long drive shaft. So this is not one you're going to see anywhere retail-wise. Very specific, House of Fords. This one's actually not particularly heavy. It's a 66, 67 gram shaft.
It's quad
but
X.
structurally very, very, very stiff. This one's at 48 inches.
Yeah, 48 inches.
So we've kind of gone, right, let's max everything out and see. We thought, let's just see what Matt can do with essentially a retail head, but a long drive setup. And with it at this length, do you change it?
Yeah, I'm waiting at the top.
Yeah.
It's the one thing I found when we first put this together, and I had a few swings with it, beginning of the week. I found it wasn't a huge deal quicker, and the strike became very inconsistent. But Stuart videoed it, and it's the one that went up on the Instagram story, and I saw that the swing was still very, almost like an iron, just to there. There wasn't that extension. And I felt then if I start waiting for it, just sort of piecing it together, watching the long drive guys and using the knowledge of the swing I've got, it's like, right, if I wait for it a little longer, that'll create a longer, wider arc. And yeah, I probably put 5 miles an hour on it just from changing that. So it's a different technique, definitely. One I haven't quite perfected yet, but we'll see what we can do.
Let's
Low on the head. Low on the head, that
club
one.
Speed. So club is then gone from 132 to 138.
Yeah.
So a little bit of that, you've got slightly longer shaft length, but 6 miles an hour. If you get absolute everything out of the contact, that's 8-9 miles an hour ball speed. That's 15 to 20 yards.
Yeah.
Which is a significant upshift, especially if you're going into the longer drive side of things. If you were competing in that side of things, 20 yards is worth having.
That's the difference between qualifying and not.
Is that something you've ever thought about doing?
I've had a few people through the years tell me I should, and I watch how those guys train and eat and live. And
I don't think your body. You kind of would it be a concern? Could your body cope with that?
I mean, with no
injuries?
ligament in the back of my left knee, it's a little bit of a concern because of that action of going that way. It's a straightening of the knee, and for me, my left knee goes back past where everyone else's does. Mine locks back, kind of back on itself. So there's a little concern of that. So I can't go quite flat out at it because I fear if I do, I'll end up on the floor in a heap. Just because my body won't play the game. But it's one of those. I know the mechanics are there. It's just a question of can I.
And that's the thing is that
can I do it over a long period of time?
For those guys and to do that and to make that some form of career as well, you've got it's a lot of physical strain. There's a lot of effort and a lot of stress that goes on the body. So actually, it's why a lot of them have fairly short times at the top.
They're around for sort of 3 or 4 years at the top and then disappear again because they just can't hold on. Right, we'll teed it up a little bit more. See if we can find the centre of this face.
Cool, 197 ball speed, 139.7 club speed. So you can see speed creeping up there.
It's just it's about 6 degrees high.
Without a middled strike as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite a physical feat to achieve that kind of speed. That's why there are so few people out there who can do it. You think the average club speed out in the main market is, well, average on tour is going to be pushing 120.
Yeah.
So you've got best part of 20 miles an hour out of those guys. So that's it's over 15%. For golfers in general, we're looking at 95 at a push, 90, maybe nearer 90 miles an hour. So that's another 50 miles an hour. That's over half. It's over 50% more than your average golfer hits. So if you factor that in and say, well, how does someone hit it? If we go back to that first one there, where it's a really clean hit. How do you hit it 350? Well, the answer is, again, very good technique still, but is the physics of you've got 186 ball speed there on a very efficient flight. Most people are 135, 140 at a push. So, that's 45, 50 miles an hour ball speed. So that's a good 100 yards. So, 250 is a good drive for most players. It's simple physics of speed. But the critical thing here is that it's not just speed, it's speed and technique is so critical at speed to keeping control of the golf ball.
If I let one, I've done quite well today. I've hit most of those pretty straight. There have been times where the hands get a little hot and it's peppering the putting green on the left. I'm missing the widest fairway in golf because at that speed, 2 degrees is 50 yards.
And that's the other bit. A lot of us think, oh, I'd love to hit it further, But actually, if you take, if you take kind of a general channel that people hit through and extrapolate that out another 100 yards, well, suddenly you're 50 yards offline, comfortably, very quickly, on a drive that would normally catch the semi-rough. You're out of bounds in another county, at best in the trees, deep in the trees. So actually, there's a penance for hitting it that far.
Which is why on a lot of golf courses, I'll hit that low cutty, hit down on flight, aim up the left, and know it's going to come back. I don't tend to hit up on it and into out on the golf course. Yeah. Just because it's dangerous. It's just a dangerous. The hands get a bit excited, and we're in trouble. I also hit a lot of 3 irons off the tee, just because I know it's just.
Then the other factor is that your 3 iron goes
280.
So, I'm not short, but that's pretty close to my drive. So, I guess we'll give it one more, and then we'll have a look at that. Actually, that leads on nicely to kind of the next discussion part of it. We've hit the 200 mile an hour mark, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, 140 club speed, 200 ball speed. I mean, that is a beast of a hit.
Yes.
But again, and this is the bit that requires the specialist equipment when you're getting to that kind of speed, because ultimately that's a 3-wood flight. So you just don't need the amount of loft that's on that club. So actually, the first one that was it 126 club speed, 14 miles an hour less club speed.
It's past it.
And has gone 13, 14 miles an hour less ball speed. He's 20 yards by it.
Yeah.
Because the flight's in a better place. So it needs such specialist equipment when you get to those sort of speeds. And there was a point in which I was thinking, you know what, shall I hit some and then see if I can build some speed? I'm not going to humiliate myself, not yet anyway. And I think it's fascinating because it's, I won't go as far as saying unique, but it's such a, I think actually such a skill to move at that speed and find contact and, control the club face. That club face control, there's not a drastically wide dispersion on all of those. No. When you consider, I'm just going to flick to one screen here, we can look at the averages. Okay, there's one that's gone left, but actually the rest of those are all pretty much in play. So actually in terms of left-right dispersion, considering the distance you've hit it, that's actually pretty impressive. And so when we had our launch event, you were hitting some, and Monty and Tony Johnson, Simon Holmes were watching you hit some, and one of Simon's comment was, "Oh, we'll go on and hit a little fade," and you did. And you went, "Oh, right," because actually there's a lot of great technique in there as well.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing to help me control the club face at that speed was a grip change. So for me, I hit a lot of my standard drives with a pretty traditional grip.
A little closer, probably. Yeah.
But when I hit long drive, I'm full left hand over the top because it allows me to get the club if I feel like the hands rotate, the club is rotating up, but the club face is staying square.
Yeah.
If I keep the hands neutral and do that, with your club face massively closed, I get the hand underneath and do it, club face is only going to stay on line with the target.
And a bit of that's probably also as well I'll just borrow that briefly as well, where you're moving that left hip out the way that much further. If you don't have that stronger grip, that handle's going to come through more as you snap through. That's working that way. So you don't have that stronger grip. It's over there, and then you've kind of got to as well. So it's a sort of dual functionality.
Yeah, it's very much a compound of things going on. That, it's, when I first started trying to hit it long, I had no idea where it was going to go. Yeah. But you work it out and you fine tune it to get it right.
So set makeup, that would be kind of the next bit. We'll pull both bags. We've got both of our bags here. We'll pull these through into the centre here. So it's a little bit more. It's actually kind of from a job role point of view. It's something that we would always look at when we're fitting. Is what job are we looking for each bit of the bag to do? It's actually it's a bit of a complex one when you get to your kind of speeds, because it muddies the water about what job you want things to do. So for me, I'm at 280 to 300 with the driver.
Yeah.
So pitching 260 to 270. Fairway wood pitching 245, 250 odd, 265 odd. I've never been I've always hit it very high, so I've never been a 5-wood player, and I'm definitely not a hybrid player. I've always been an iron player. I've got a driving iron in the bag that is a 225, 230 yard, so 220 to 25 yard carry comfortably and chase onto 240 odd. So, and then 4 irons 215. There's a progression which doesn't get exaggerated in terms of those distance gaps. I've got a 30 odd yard gap driver to fairway wood, a 25 odd yard gap fairway wood to my 2 iron, and then a 20 odd yard gap so it's actually very, very manageable. And then I keep 13 odd yard gaps all the way down through to pretty much to pitch wedge. My pitch wedge goes 135. Your pitch wedge goes
155.
So for me to have 3 clubs underneath that, fine, I go 135, I can drop it down to 120, 50 degree at 120, 55 at 105, 60 at 90. And that kind of covers me down, and I can play half swings down to 50 odd yards. you've got 155 yards to cover.
And I only carry
Below
3
the
clubs
pitch
below
wedge.
that currently.
So that's one area where it creates actually quite a lot of I say complications. It creates issues that the normal golfer just wouldn't. Again, 135 for a pitch wedge is long. We're looking at 110 for a lot of people's pitch wedges. So you don't need half a set of clubs underneath that. You need 2 or 3, and you're down at 50, 60 yards comfortably. So is that something? Obviously, you haven't loaded up the bottom part of the bag, but is that an area that? Ironically, this is a bit like the builder who never finishes his own house. We haven't really gone through your bag in kind of detail as yet. But is that something that you are looking to change? Is it something that you have worked on over the years?
When I play a lot of golf, when I feel like I've got a bit of touch going on with the wedges, I don't play enough golf. Is probably the first point. But when I do
You
play,
work in the industry, you clearly don't.
Yeah. When I do play, and I kind of have a bit of practice time to get the feeling with the wedges, I'm a very clock back foot and then clock to give me different distances. And
so the clock is sorry, I can get mind and mouth working that way. It's a system of having lengths of swings to control different distances and keeping it. So very Dave Pelt's classic clock system where you've got a 7:30 swing, a 9 o'clock swing, a 10:30 swing, and that can then mean as long as you keep the tempo the same, 3-4 distances with each wedge. So.
Because for me, a full lob wedge is 110.
Yeah.
So what most par fours look like to me is driver. A 400-yard par four is driver and a flick.
Yeah.
And so I had to get very good with that bit. And that's why often I find myself hitting 3-iron, 4-iron off a tee, because then I have a full shot.
Yeah.
I know shots gained in terms of... The thing for me I find difficult is strokes gained on tour suggests pull driver out, hit it. Strokes gained to an amateur might not suggest the same thing.
And a lot of the courses that you're playing are not 7,400 yards.
No, I'm playing your
6,400 yards. So it's and so that you take those 1,000 yards off. That's a big, and they're kind of little fiddly tree-lined, fiddly courses rather than the big courses that the pros are playing. So hence a 280-yard 3-iron runs out of room on a good amount of time on the course. So. So there's not only the wedge bit, and that's the thing is if you're not playing regularly, zoning in the wedges, zoning in the distances, the shot types, the flighting, to score when hitting at distance actually becomes it's almost harder because you can't just stand and hit a normal swing, you've got to feel the shot in the whole time. So it actually can make scoring pretty tough.
Yeah, if I haven't played for a while, it does show.
So. The other bit that gets obviously through the irons is a fairly simple analogy of developing lofts and developing distances through. Sort of gapping between the irons, roughly how far between irons?
15 to 18.
Yeah.
Golf course swing, we're probably 6-7 mile an hour down on flat out.
Yeah.
So it's probably more 15. And then when I'm having to squeeze, when I know I've got an extra 3 or 4 yards in the tank in something, and I'm probably one of the rare cases in golf where I'd prefer to go flat out than try and hit an easier shot.
Yeah.
So if I'm 220 and it's a ease off 5 or a flat out 6, I'd rather go flat out with a 6 because I trust the timing of my body more than trying to squeeze a little cutty 5 in.
I think that also goes back, and I've always been better. I've never been good at subtle stuff. I've always been better simply going down. I'd much rather go down and have a full swing. So I think that's also where by virtue of having the distance, that's kind of how your body works. You're either a fast twitcher, the kind of swing where everything kind of fires through, and then it suits to allow it to go, versus you take a Luke Donald, is not that kind of player. He's a quieter swing. He's going to, hence his wedge game just ridiculous. So that's where, obviously your speed, 16 to 18 yard gaps between the irons. Most players are 10 to 12. It's purely that extrapolation of speed out.
Yeah.
So I've noticed there is a question in. I will check that out very shortly. The interesting bit comes at the top end. So obviously you've got a 3-iron at 280.
I've got a 3
a
with
driver
this, a
at 350, 360. And then, so a lot of the time we'd ask people when it gets to a fairway. So for me, my 3-woods are teeing off club to go a similar distance or just shorten your 3-iron, which is a strategic decision, right? Do I want to position myself with a 7-iron in instead of a 9-iron, or there's a bunker that I don't want to reach? For you, 3-wood, and we had a conversation about this the other day, is it's almost one of those ones where we were looking at, well, is it even worth having? Other than the drivable short par 4 at 300 yards, 310. Kind of becomes what it's useful for.
At 310, am I going to take that risk if I know I can hit that 3-iron 280 and then just have a short pitch up the green? You know, do I back myself from 30 yards to make up and down, or from 300 to make 3? Probably back myself up and down more than I do from 300. So it's very much a club that doesn't really. It's a 915. It's an old fairway wood. I've never really thought of changing it because
until we hit the Titleist.
Yeah, and then I hit the Titleist and it was like, oh, okay, so there is something different in there. Yeah. Because for me, it was just a club that I never felt comfortable stood over. You know, I'd hit it as a par 5 into the wind second shot if I was having to hit a flat one, because I can really turn it down and keep it under the wind. But that was really its only use.
The strategy is a different kind of
it wasn't like your standard 3-wood that you want to either tee it up with for position or hit a big high flying one because you're trying to land it onto a green. That's 3-iron and 4-iron.
So so no matter what the golfer type, we've all got sort of challenges working out what it is we're trying to do with bag makeup in particular. And once you go beyond a certain distance, actually it almost renders one part of the bag almost redundant, unless you're playing the tour side golf course. I'm going to check out what the question had. A question in. So there was one from yesterday from Julian Aguilar. Said regarding the Titleist drivers, saying which launch is lower, the TSR2 or the TSI2. We both did a bit of testing with it yesterday. I think what we're seeing from TSR, it feels like they've aimed at a little bit higher club speed, or to maximise a little higher club speeds this time round, where Titleist have always been about consistency in the past and not being the longest clubs. I think this year we're going to see a lot more kind of longer hitters using them, but obviously, we've got a lot more testing to do with them, and we're going to see more and more players using them. But I think TSR2, both fairway and driver, launched just a little bit lower this year. I think spin's a little lower, but the launch is a little bit lower for me.
They seem to have, rather than it in previous years being the 2, or the 2 was the higher flying, the 3 was the lower, it's now a case of the 2 is for the guy that sweeps it a little bit, doesn't take a divot with it, doesn't hit down on it, whereas the 3 is for the guy that hits down on it. You see, classic case, Mark's had one in the end bay just there, just whilst I was loosening up this morning. The guy was 4.5 down into the 3, but I said to Mark, just get the TSR3 out. He hit it and it knuckled it right down. Spin was at 2.5. It was the perfect number.
That's what we saw with Tom yesterday in the test as well. I mean, we did a bit of a pre-test before the video we recorded yesterday, and Matt and I were doing a little bit of testing, and it was really fascinating seeing how actually a slight change in action, we both went to get a little bit more on top, particularly in the fairways, a little bit more on top, a little more squeezed, a little laggy, and the TSR3 lit up. I mean, it really, the spin consistency, the flight just tightened right down. Do that with the TSR2 and you'd start to get a little bit of variety in terms of launch. Shallow out with the TSR2 and it came out on a strong flight and a really consistent launch. But the TSR3, the spin got a little variable again.
Yes. The 3 is better high in the head, the 2 is better low in the head is, I think, probably the best way to compare the 2.
Yeah.
Which again just comes down to the physics of how you move the golf club, and that's why we exist, right? To work that one out.
Gives us something to do. And I guess to kind of go a little bit more sort of back onto the TSR data, obviously that's such a hot product at the moment, you're being just launched yesterday. I think it feels like the spin windows have got closer together, I think, on the 2 and the 3, particularly drivers. I think we had our initial look when we got shown the clubs a few weeks back when our area sales rep brought them round. I was surprised at how similar the spin was, but just a slightly different launch window and a bit of a different feel. But spin a lot more consistent on the driver than it was last time. There's a little bit more of a separation with the TSIs. That was quite noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, you had it yesterday with Kiara with the TSI 1 that she plays versus the TSR 2 was the 2 just didn't, because it spins a little lower, it's a little more, as you say, together with they're all a little more consistent and tighter together. She just couldn't get the same performance than she did out of the one.
Yeah, the flight was very different. And when you've got a young lady who we've worked with for years, who's out on Ladies Access Tour and next year on the main tour, she's been using TSI 1, it's up in at 3 or 4 degrees. You get really nice flight out of it. Just could we bring spin down a little bit? I mean, it's been the same driver that Neddy Corder's been using. I thought, right, TSR 2, that's going to be a winner, easy. That's just going to be like hit it twice, great, done. And it just didn't flight. It didn't get the same consistency of launch for her. She's at 100 she was a little fatigued actually when we first tested with her the other day, and she was at kind of just over 100 miles an hour, but she's up to kind of 104, 105. So one of the longest hitters in the ladies' game. And certainly look out for her the next couple of years. She's a real talent and an incredibly hard worker. But it was fascinating seeing that it just didn't get the ball up the way we thought it would. Even with a little bit more loft, the launch angle versus a TSI 1 was down a little bit. Now TSI 1 continues through. That's still current product. There wasn't the gain. The ball speed consistency was good, but the flight just wasn't there. So there wasn't the gain to make a change for her at this point. But yeah, it feels like, and she was saying the same thing. It feels like it's once you get over 105 mile an hour up to more tour style, so tour validated speeds, that's when it really starts to light up. And I just about creeped. I can get one at 110. But the TSR 2 is one I thought, well, I could maybe use that. But yeah, just interesting. But the more we test with them, the more we fit with them, the more kind of subtleties and nuances we're going to see with them. But
time will tell. Time is always the test.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of sort of progression through any other questions coming in, not as yet. So we'll carry on chatting. I think I guess going back to kind of part of the original discussion here, this is maybe where I swallow my humility and start hitting a couple. Is from an action point of view, what do you feel for someone who's saying, right, I want to develop my speed, I want to build on that a little bit. What's the most important thing to do? What are the kind of the key fundamentals of saying, right, not necessarily kind of going wild on things, but how do I squeeze as much out of my action as I can?
Normally, the answer for your average amateur is lower body and ground use.
Yeah.
You see a lot of amateurs they don't do a lot with their lower body because they're a little from the inside and they just stand up on it. You see the heels come off the floor at impact.
Yeah.
You want to be going the other way. You want to be getting down into the ground on that start of that transition. And yes, okay, you end up with a release up into the ball, but that's from the force of pushing down, pushing you back up into it. Prime example is you watch Rory in slow-mo, and he's with driver, and he's down at the top and then up through impact. But because he's pushing into the ground, he's getting that ground force reaction back up, forcing him up, which creates more speed for the club because it's just more power going in that direction.
I think that's the thing and that's why I think the going back to the balance side of it, if you're balanced and grounded, you can use the ground to work against. If your weight position gets off, then you can't use your lower body at all. They might as well not be there. Yeah. And so if all you're doing is spinning, you're not working against anything. So you're making sure that you're using that. Now, granted, obviously you've got to have a decent bit of mobility. That's the other bit. Flexibility is really key. So, let's what we'll do, move those out of the way, is completely not loosened up. I'm going to do a few, and then just work a couple of things and see, right, actually, how much extra can we get? If I start to use the ground, if I just spin and then start to use the ground a little bit more, we'll see what we can achieve. I'm going to lower that T because I'll go straight underneath.
Yeah, that one is not set up quite for you.
No, I'm not a high tier of a ball.
I think the other thing I see a lot of people is to do with the left foot. That setup we've always taught when we start feet square.
Yeah.
But actually, you watch a lot of the guys, especially now on tour. More and more guys on tour are doing it. Is they see their left foot's 30 degrees open at setup, and it just allows that transition through. Is then a lot easier because you're not
clear.
Your weight isn't going over your left foot and over the ankle. It's because the foot is wider and there's more surface area for you to move onto on the front side.
Right.
So I think that's probably the first port of call for a lot of amateurs.
And I guess a little bit of it, once that opens up,
you can
it
rotate
helps
a bit
that left
quicker.
hip clear out of the way. If I were to go the other way and turn it in, you get blocked off and then you just injure your knee.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to... I'm laughing because I just know where this is going to come out first, and I can see what numbers in the club speed right now. So sorry to disappoint anyone thinking they're going to see 2 1s in the first 2 side. I'm going to get a couple just to loosen up.
You'd take that as a loosener to start the day, wouldn't you? 288 total, 107
I found the
club.
face, I'll take that.
Take what you can.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah. So let's do a couple. This is my normal gamer driver. Trying to. Alright, I'll do.
See, this is where he makes up his shots, he doesn't miss the fairway. He doesn't miss the middle of it.
You haven't played with me yet. Have you? Right, we'll do kind of one more pretty solid one, and then. Actually, I guess where I've always had, that it's a problem from a dispersion point, I've always had a little bit of a move off and move back on. So I've always had quite a lot of weight shift in my swing.
Yeah.
Which historically has meant hook as a miss, but has always meant fairly long.
Yeah, because you get the transition of power.
Right, so if I, this is good, club's going to go down. If I try and step on one just with a normal kind of technique.
Oh, I reckon it's gone up 163 on the ball speed. There we go, 111, all the ones.
Right, I'll leave now. But that's, having done when I haven't done any, I'm a classic, haven't done any fitness for a long time. That's about my max out.
Still done more than me.
The quickest I've had when I've been in the studio and been doing a little bit, actually, ironically, was doing a little bit of groundwork, technique-wise, I have got to 114 club speed.
Right, okay.
But I'll take that all day long. So I guess from that.
But the thing for you is, and I think it's a good place to start for a lot of golfers, is you know your limits. As in, you know where, when you go after one, you know where it's going to be. You know what you can get it up to. You know what your performance is without it getting too wild. So from being on the golf course, if you've got one where it's a little longer and you know you've got a little bit of space, you can open that up.
Open that to that. Yeah.
Worst case, that's not going to be, looking at those club numbers, that's not going to be a million miles away. Even if you get the face a little open, you're not going to be in a big spot of bother. So that from a distance gain is straight away you're at a point where, without you doing any work, you've got a better drive from feeling like you can give it a little more.
So next step would be, I guess it's really going to be a case of, if I can build up, it's getting that bit of
the top of the top of the backswing,
yeah.
feel like the body goes down before it then comes back up. Yeah.
Okay. So
Almost feel like you almost get a little in the air when it comes to both feet through impact, where it's coming up so quickly.
Right. Let's see. Let's use a bit of that and see if I can squeeze a bit more out of this. Let's get that. Right. At 0.1 of a mile an hour?
0.2.
A bit of it's kind of getting a feel for that change in motion, and it's a very different feel through the ball. I think, and this is one of the things where I was a little bit nervous if someone says, I'm trying to use the ground when they come in the fitting, because I know that changes your height, balance quite a lot.
Yeah.
So it's something that, it's not something that's an easy thing to work on, actually. Let's see if
especially not from a, it's always a dangerous one from an amateur perspective, which is why I would never say before you go out on a round, never go thinking about this. But if you're just practicing on a Tuesday evening or something and you've got around that weekend, by all means give it a shot towards the end of your session.
All right, let's give this a... Let's go on the left.
It has gone left. Same speed.
No, see, clearly I'm too old for this game. No, joking around. But yeah, but there's maybe that thing of your functioning as well, is perhaps I'm actually, I play enough and technique-wise in a solid place. Perhaps I'm actually, there is that saying, am I at the top end, having done no fitness work for at least a year or 12? And actually, am I at the limit of physically what I can do without losing technique altogether?
Because from what I see, kind of the difference is you don't have a lot of lateral motion with your left foot. It's still very planted. Although you feel you're down into it on the left side, you're not speeding that clear. And getting the left foot to move, it's still very static on the ground.
Okay.
And that feeling of that movement will create a bit more speed because you'll have to move faster to get that leg going.
Or collapsing on the ground, right? That's good.
A little high on the head.
Yeah, a little toe side. Yeah. No, clearly
You're clearly at your peak.
But then it also shows it's not something you can just switch on and do straight away.
You have
going
to
be a case of
take a
practicing
proper
hard and going, okay, well, you say what then becomes the limit of actually staying playable versus, okay, I mean, it's a good thing to do if you're generally trying to move on. I think if I was saying, right, if I was going to go and say, right, I'm going to go back and play in some of the amateur stuff and I want to get some more distance, and then it's potentially something that's worth doing to relatively keep up with the young guns. And that 300 yards is long enough, but I'm going to be 15, 20 yards behind a lot of them comfortably. The amount of players we're seeing where club speeds are 10 miles an hour more than that is going up and up and up and up. Thankfully in golf, wise old mind can have that a little bit, which I haven't developed yet either. So, but if I was going to do that, then I might say, right, let's work on some speed, let's practice over the winter, get in the gym, strengthen up, and then I'll probably get to the 114s, 115s, but it requires a bit of a commitment and a bit of time to do so. Yeah. It's not just something, right, I'm going to hit 3 swings and suddenly find 5 miles an hour. No,
but then the danger that comes with it is equipment. Then you have to consider a change, because if you start to pick up a bit of speed and you start moving the body differently, your timing changes. Your timing on how the club releases at the top changes, and then how the club releases around you changes. I've changed that about 5 times in terms of swing weight since I've started the speed stuff. I started out with something that was D6. That was when I first picked it up.
And is now
D2. But at one point it got to C9 to really lighten it off, to feel like I could just go as fast as I could.
And that's actually kind of the irony. People think, would you not go heavier if you're putting more effort in? But actually, the quicker you move, sometimes you need the club to come with you a little bit more. So ironically, it's the opposite. You're generating much more force. So that same weight of club lags that a little bit more and start to throw timing off. It's not always the most obvious change that you've got to make to keep the clubs relevant.
Yeah.
There was somewhere else I was about to go with that. Yeah, and I think that was it. It's where, if you go back a year or so, the whole autoflex thing, lightweight, counterbalanced, or you're going to pick up speed. It's about picking up speed the right way. From a club point of view, I could, this one I know, go under the head. When I've just seen that, and I'm just going to go, there's no point changing again. The head might be in danger of being updated, but I know for where my swing is and my game is now, from a shaft and the timing point of view, so I can step on it, pick up a couple of miles an hour, 2 or 3 miles an hour, and still keep everything nice and tight. I know exactly what that club's doing. As you say, if I'm going to pick up 4 or 5 miles an hour, well, that might need a different setup altogether. But train of thought, autoflex, actually, it's such a specific weight and balance that it doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. It's a bit like you've got to, if it's outside of how you move, if the tracking of the club is outside of the way you develop your speed, well, you're going to lose consistency. So, as you say, it can end up hurting you
before you gain from it. And it's even going down beyond. You go beyond driving. You go down to the irons. There's an argument to say at certain speeds that no matter how good a ball striker you are, play something a little bit more forgiving, because the power bats of the way the game has gone. Yeah. For me, I spin that 6 iron at 6.5, 7 when I go after one. It peaks at 165 feet. It's too high. Yeah. But I was hitting the Cobra LTDX the other day. Okay, that's a true, real low loft, but that was spinning at 4,400. It was carrying 260 as a 6 iron, but it was spinning at at 4,400. So from
Yeah.
a construct perspective of, right, what's an optimal spin, we wouldn't be too far away from it.
Yeah,
But because of
closer to the Cobra in
with-
theory than the
With the Bryson conversation of, he doesn't care what the number is on the bottom, it's all about getting it in the window, the launch window, the launch spin window. Everyone says he loft jacks, but he's only doing that to get it in the right spin loft window.
Yeah, when you've got that much more speed, there's that much more action on the back of the ball, therefore it creates more friction, creates more spin.
Yeah.
It's actually where when you get from I guess not from a driver point of view, pretty across the board, the higher your club speed, the more important spin is versus launch. The lower your club speed, the more important launch is than low spin. You're going to pick up more distance more consistently at low speeds with a higher launch angle, within reason, to a point, than getting spin down, because if you get spin down too much, it falls out of the sky. For you, a little bit too much spin and it stalls and hits a brick wall because of the extra friction, the extra...
If it's windy, I will avoid playing golf at all costs because I just have no hope going through it.
And that's why I say it's always that element of a bit of a complex thing of working out the right balance of setup from top to bottom. Flight windows, the Strixon irons, we know they spin 300 or 400 rows less than pretty much every other head, which is what, it's no surprise they're in your bag because they're just a better head for that ball flight. But it's easy, we're seeing more tour players playing more forgiving clubs now. So I think where traditionally was always, yes, the best ball strikers are generally always in a blade. Someone like Rory is a low spinner of a ball, so the blade keep a bit more spin on. I think we're seeing more and more of the top tour players playing something a little bit more user-friendly now. So I haven't seen any other questions come in. Again, anything you've got, just let us know. We can always come back to them on the next live. I'm sure we'll have this gentleman in the bay another time, because partly it's great seeing that kind of ball flight data, but also from a testing point of view, we can kind of create some fun numbers and get some fun data in there as well. But also very knowledgeable about the swing in the game, all told as well. If you like our content, please just click on the subscribe button, subscribe bell. We're going to keep putting these out weekly. And say any questions at all, anything you want us to look at and talk about or investigate, test out, again, just let us know. We'll happily do it every Friday lunchtime. But I hope this has been useful. Hope you've all enjoyed watching Matt in particular, and then seeing me with my club speed dropping the harder I try and hit it, which again, sad reality for a lot of us.
Yeah.
But it's really enjoyable doing the content as well. So as I say, anything that comes along, we'll definitely get our teeth stuck into. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next week.